Harvest's underway in Victoria's Goulburn Valley. The fruit is bountiful, but a tight labour market means the workers are not.
The type of work, it is quite physically demanding, and also a challenge for us is that we really only attract workers for 2 to 3 months of the year.
Michael Crisera from Fruit Growers Victoria says finding people to pick the fruit is one of the industry's biggest concerns and costs.
Labour costs will probably make up to 60% of our growing costs, to be honest. It's huge. It's the main cost in our industry.
While some pay workers by an hourly rate, he says the majority of growers here are paying pickers according to how much fruit they harvest, paying by what's called the piece rate.
For example, in our game, in the fruit game, we'll pay around the $50 a bin for them to get it off, and then that, over the day, depending how many bins they pick, that's how much they get paid.
Growers like knowing a fixed cost and say it incentivises pickers to work harder.
The competent picker would probably average around the $250 a day sort of thing, around $250 to $300 sometimes. Really good pickers can pick up, make up around the $400 a day.
When Isaiah started picking, it was hard going.
I got sore with my muscle.
Now in his 4th year in Australia, he finds the fruit comes faster.
It depends on good fruits. When more crops, I pick 10 or 8 bins a day using a cherry picker.
The jobs allowed him to buy a taxi and build a home for his mum back in Samoa.
I like this job. When I got experience, that's easy for us.
But that's not everyone's experience. A recent Senate inquiry heard from workers on a Victorian strawberry farm that felt let down by the piece rate system.
Ai afia o matou tulafa inga luenga le rate o le tray o matou pikina mo le seleni o matou sailia tolu tala le kau le tray tolu tala lua tolu tala tolu to pa ula tolu tala lua pe afa le tonu fuala au le anga fuala au o le molunga la pusa mo te pikina le aso o le onos food pa umailalo tolu food fast food fesusu ya ilo fa pena ya le molunga o matou tupe mo le aso.
Unions say the piece rate left some workers with incredibly low wages.
We've seen the horrible examples like up in Coffs Harbour with workers getting paid as little as $3 an hour. We've seen cases, I've seen personally, met with workers who have had their piece rate change on a daily basis, and that is their piece rate is changed to try and drive down wages for that worker.
Piece rates are commonly used in crops that can't be mechanically harvested, things like citrus, berries and mangoes.
We've seen countless examples of exploitation right across our growing regions of workers, not just overseas workers working on our different visa programs, but local workers as well.
Following a union-led appeal, the Fair Work Commission ruled that piece rates aren't working. So the rules are changing. From April 28, horticulture workers must be guaranteed a minimum hourly wage, no matter how much produce they pick. For casuals, that's about $25 an hour. Workers can still earn a piece rate as an incentive. The average competent worker must be allowed to earn 15% above the hourly rate. That's roughly $30 an hour.
I would imagine that there are some farmers out there saying, well, that's how we've been applying it. But unfortunately, there's not enough of them. And what we want to see is our members and workers in the industry being able to go to a farm and have some certainty that if they've worked X amount of hours per week, they'll at least get that. If they're more productive, if they can harvest more, pick more, be punnet, buckets, crates, whatever it might be, that they can earn some more on top. Now, that's going to make them more productive. That's a better outcome for the farmer, and it's a good outcome for our members, so long as we've got that safety net in place.
We have a very strong position that anyone who does not pay people properly and treat workers fairly needs to leave the industry. It's just simply unacceptable, and it undermines growers doing the right thing. And it's not limited to piece rate. Like, obviously piece rate has received a lot of attention and focus, but if there are employers or contractors who are looking to treat people poorly, they seem to find new and unique ways to do that.
Members of the Australian Fresh Produce Alliance account for more than half the industry's turnover and more than a third of fresh fruit and vegetable exports. It wants better policing of the rules to be part of any conversation about piece rates.
The clear requirement that all workers must be paid a minimum provides an enforceable standard. The issue is that we need regulators to enforce and to ensure that no one can operate how they like, that they are in fact operating consistent with the law. So the piece rate decision is a very important step forward, but it must be backed up by compliance and enforcement.
Michael Rogers says the changes, which come with new record-keeping obligations for growers, mean some businesses will need to restructure.
The implications for the decision are far-reaching for those employers who haven't been paying well. For those employers who have been paying well, it pushes the average hourly rate or the expectation under piece rate to $30 an hour, which in anyone's language is a lot of money for picking fruit.
I don't think there's any question that this is going to have an impact on prices.
One of the reasons Victorian Farmers Federation President Emma Germano expects the Fair Work changes will increase costs for farmers and consumers is due to slower workers.
We're going to have to ensure that those slower workers, and they might be slower workers for lots of different reasons, who were happy to come along on farm and get paid what would be less than the minimum hourly wage. Essentially, a farmer is going to have to make the decision now as to whether or not they accept that worker on the farm because it is going to simply be costing them more.
Farmers worry that could further compound the worker shortage, estimated to be in the thousands nationally. Here on Emma Germano's Gippsland farm, the workers picking cauliflower are paid an hourly rate. But whether it's hourly or piece rate, she says shouldn't really matter. And there's a bigger question at hand.
So how much we pay to have our produce picked and packed on our farms is almost irrelevant if the farmer is getting paid a fair price. Supermarkets simply have to purchase from those growers that they know are doing the right thing. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what the system is. It doesn't matter what the minimum number is. It doesn't matter how you calculate piece rate. If it's not complied with and enforced, then it's all a moot point.
We're really concerned that there seems to be a lot of focus on making sure that everybody's being paid correctly, but doesn't seem to be any pressure on the supermarkets to make sure that they pay our growers correctly.
If the big price setters, be it Coles and Woolies, are setting prices which mean the only sustainable way that a farmer can operate is to rip off workers, then that is a problem. And we're working with the retailers to try and fix up any problems in their supply chain. And we want to work with the farmers to make sure that they are getting a fair price so that our members can get a fair wage.
Woolworths, Coles and Aldi were all invited to be a part of this story, but no spokespeople were available for interview. Woolworths says it works to strike the right balance so customers can have access to quality, affordable produce and suppliers receive a fair market price. It also says it sets clear expectations for its suppliers to uphold the rights of workers and conducts regular due diligence. Coles says it's committed to the fair treatment of all workers in the supply chain, and its suppliers are required to comply with an ethical sourcing policy, and that suppliers are monitored through engaging external auditors. Aldi says it's got a clear code of conduct and standards which its suppliers must follow. It expects its suppliers and business partners to comply with all applicable local laws as their first obligation. Back at Emma Germano's farm, she says growers are still confused about the new laws and many are seeking clarity. It's particularly stressful for those businesses that will be mid-harvest when the rules change. But she is also hopeful that the piece rates issue could be the catalyst for a broader conversation.
When we see dollar punnets of strawberries, cauliflowers, available for purchase for $1, these sorts of things are not sustainable for the industry. Essentially, if farmers don't get paid enough for their produce, the only shortcuts that can be taken are the cost of labour and the cost to the environment. So it's great that we're actually starting to have that conversation and people can really appreciate the true price of food.